If you are a woman who is feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, run down, frustrated, angry, this episode is for you. In this episode, Annie Yatch and I walk through the importance of maintaining your sense of self during this busy season as a woman. Whether it's your career, it's your life at home, we're going to give you a handful of very easy, simple, free, take very little to no time tasks that can help you give yourself emotional deposits throughout your day. They're going to help you spend more of your day in flow, leading to a more calm, balanced, centered, happy version of you. Picture yourself getting home from a full day of work or getting the kids at pickup and feeling so lit up, happy, ready to be there for them and able to take care of it all. If you incorporate these tasks that we give you in this episode, that's exactly how you're going to feel. Enjoy. All right, welcome back, Annie Yatch. We're going to just dive in. Welcome again to Be Inspired Mama podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, I could talk to you for hours, so let's just have some fun. I'm ready.
This one is going to be incredible. This episode is for every woman out there who is overwhelmed, exhausted, spread thin, maybe frustrated, maybe a little bit bitey or angry. This is for every woman who feels like she is losing herself amidst the busyness of this season of her life. And Annie, I'm so excited to bring you on for this topic. You know, I really want to bring your magic and genius to my listeners. And one of my favorite things that you do so well is you help women identify this sense of self within us, which I know we're going to define and talk about because I want to make it really, really tangible for people. And we're going to talk about some tangible steps that everyone can do to actually create these deeper connections. What that's going to translate to is getting through all of your to-do list, all of your jobs, taking care of everybody, but feeling calm, connected, peaceful, joyful, happy, and having high-level relationships with everyone in your family.
Doesn't that sound like magic? I tell you, like every time we talked about this, I'm like, it's not true that we can have everything we want, but it is true that we can create the moments that we want to feel every single day. That's sort of key, right? How are you at creating these moments that you really want to feel? How many emotional deposits do you put into your bank account so that you can feel really good throughout the day? That's always the key.
Yeah, those emotional deposits throughout the day. And they don't have to be these huge moments. These don't have to be long bubble baths or massages. I think so many of us hear that word self-love, self-care, and it's overwhelming. It's like, I don't have money. I don't have time. Like, sounds amazing. I need it all. I can't access it. So we're going to flip that in this episode.
Correct. We're going to give you the small but very powerful pieces that allow you to build a 5-step process to reconnecting with who you are.
Yes. Awesome. So I think where we start, and I think a lot of women would resonate with this and maybe not any yet. And so we want to help you connect with this. But I think for some women, there's part of where the anger and frustration can come from is that we know there's so much more to this life than just serving everyone else's needs, checking off our to-do list, but perhaps we have no idea even how to access it. And I want to define, you know, when we're going to be talking about that inner self, that inner spark within us that just has so much more to give to this world, like, what does that mean? How can we personify her and actually create this bigger connection with her again so that we can have more calm, connected, joyful, fun days?
Well, I think the first step, and this is something that for most of us as moms or as women, right, who are overdoing and overworking all the time, the first step is we have to figure out what that voice sounds like. Because I think for a lot of us, we've got two different voices in our head sometimes. We've got the more masculine voice that's like, you should do all these things. You need to do this. This is what people expect of you. That's the masculine voice telling us all the shoulds, right? But then we've got this other really quiet voice who's actually our feminine voice. And that feminine voice is like, well, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go play. Or no, I want to go swimming. Or no, I want to go tap dancing. Right? But we don't listen to that feminine voice as much because we're so used to the societal conditioning of doing more and being more all the time. So I think that first piece is you have to identify the voice inside yourself and figure out how do you get there. And I think the only way most of us get there is in absolute silence or quiet. And that's the exact opposite of what most of us think is going to help us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's just, this sense of self, as we're going to be referring to in this entire episode, is this inner voice. So if we say self-love, self-care, ways to nourish yourself, picture this inner voice, this inner person. We all have this voice inside of our heads. Sometimes, like Annie's saying, it's all the shoulds, like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, but I really should go help this person. I really should just do the dishes. I really should do that. That's that inner voice. That's yourself. It's also, like Annie said, it's that person inside that's like, but I don't want to. Like, I want to go play. Or maybe it's like, I don't want to. A mad version, a light version. It could sound like a kid. That's every time we say self in this episode, I want you to think about that inner voice.
And for that inner voice too, we have to be aware of the fact that like sometimes she's screaming, sometimes she's angry, sometimes she's happy. We have to make whatever emotion she's feeling okay, right? So if you hear in your inner voice like, "Oh, I don't want to do the dishes again," or "Why can't somebody else do this?" We listen to her, we're like, "Okay, how are you feeling?" If we can identify that feeling and be like, "Okay, it sounds like you're feeling angry."
Mhm.
Right? So we're validating the feeling that we feel inside first. So we validate that voice. And then from there, we can say, wow, what are the other options here? What if we decide not to do the dishes? What else would you like to do? Right? We have to start that dialogue because if you don't start the dialogue, then you can't connect with her at all.
Love that. And so many of us talk to ourselves anyway, right? Like you're walking through the day, like, gotta put this in there, gotta put this in. This is a more connected way to talk to ourselves. And you don't have to do it out loud, but you can. But that's a great first step in connecting with this self.
And to be honest with you, like I know this sounds pretty funny, but you've heard me before. I will have conversations when I wake up in the morning, and the very first thing I'll ask, my inner voices will say, "What would make you feel loved and happy today? What would make you feel loved?" And usually it's, well, I want to have a really nice breakfast and sit by myself with a big thing of whatever caffeinated beverage I want. I just want to sit in that space with silence. I'm like, all right, let me see how I can make this happen for you. Right. So it's not only her speaking to me, but it's me listening and then deciding how am I going to fit this in so that she gets what she needs from the beginning of the day.
Love
Again,
it.
that's a 5-10 minute experience, but it's still powerful.
And do you find as we're defining this self, she's many different flavors throughout every day? She could be childlike, she could be like lazy, not that lazy is a bad thing, lazy, tired, want to be, laying around. She could be excited, playful. Like she is a million different versions and flavors.
Yeah, a million different versions, and every version is relevant and every version is good.
Hmm.
That's the big thing that for many of us as women, we tell ourselves that these different versions, the angry version or the sad version, that they're not good and we shouldn't be feeling those feelings. But the reality is, every single feeling you feel is okay and it's good for you to feel and it's good to be able to validate that feeling and emotion. Right? So I think, like you said, right, if we can all start by going into the silence to identify that spark that's within us and identifying that self, and then asking her for what she needs, and then being willing to negotiate with her so she can get more of what she wants, I think we're on a really good path to feeling more balanced and more calm throughout our day.
Absolutely. Love it. Okay. Anything else on that? Anything else with like connecting with that self voice?
I mean, there's so many good ways to do it. I mean, if you have like the child in you that's getting frustrated because she wants to go play, then usually there's the conversation where you put your hand on your heart and your other hand on your stomach and just say, "Hi, I'm listening. Thank you for sharing this with me. I can hear what you're saying. I'll always have your back. Where would you like to go play?" Right? But we have to validate the feeling before we can really connect to that inner self, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is that's the one gap that I think most of us miss. We might hear a voice, but we might not validate that voice. And if the voice isn't validated, then it doesn't grow in strength or grow in power.
That's huge. That's so important because I really find that inner voice is that's our intuition. As women, we're so intuitive. It's become so soft. It's become such a whisper because I wonder your thoughts on this. So many of us women, like I said at the beginning, have become disconnected, overwhelmed, tired, exhausted. Well, so what do so many of us do in those moments? We further distract ourselves.
We do.
Right. So I'm definitely guilty of this. There's times I'm like, okay, I don't feel like doing anything. I'm going to scroll Instagram. Well, when I take a moment to actually be like, what is it that I actually need during this time and quiet myself and connect with myself? That's when I say self love, like that's what I mean. It's those moments to just be like, what is it that I actually need right now? We can get so many answers. And that's, like you said, that's how that voice continues to get louder and louder. It's like, oh, you're actually listening to me.
Because that's the other piece of this too, right? When we go to scroll or we go to feed that dopamine hit, all we're doing with that scrolling is we're just reiterating that there is no value to the voice, right? And so if we can look and pause and just ask ourselves, what do I really want before we go into autopilot mode? Because the autopilot mode is the subconscious. So that's all the fear based stuff. That's why we choose disconnection over connection. So if we can go into that moment and be like, all right, I'm about to do this thing that I know is just a distraction. Why am I doing it? And what do I really want here? I
Mhm.
think most of us, if we have that chance to pause or if we even interrupt the pattern for ourselves and then we validate that emotion immediately, everything changes because now she knows we're listening and she wants to tell us more.
And like you said, there's no wrong way to feel, I think that takes away a lot of the fear.
Yeah.
Because when you were first walking me through this process, like I was scared. I was scared. Okay, what is it that I actually want when I'm going to, just have a brain break on Instagram? Like, what if I'm hating this part of my life? What if this is an escape? Like, okay, I sat with that. It's okay. It's not that scary because what happens is you get answers.
You do. And you might not always get the answer you want, but you always get the answer you need. And that's
Mhm.
what I love about it because you might think that you don't know something. You might think that you don't have access to something higher or more divine, but the second you sit with yourself, it's almost like you become a channel of everything you need to hear. And I like to think of it almost like I'm talking to my higher self because, there's the self, there's the higher self, there's the God self, if you believe that. And so I'm always like, all right, well, what does my higher self want me to know? And if you ask that question, you will be amazed at the truth that starts coming in, as
Mhm.
long as you're, validating the self first so that that voice can start to grow.
Okay, so before we get started on the handful of steps we're going to go through to connecting with ourselves, let's think about like someone who has completely disconnected themselves from this inner voice, has not participated in self-love, self-care. This is like every woman taking care of everyone else's needs first. Where does she begin? What's the first step in listening to this voice? So probably not like the higher self.
I would say the easiest way, and this was hard for me at the beginning, so I remember what this was like. I would sit there and I'd be like, I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what I should want. So I would sit there and I would basically be like, okay, I have a choice. I can either get up and get in the shower and get started with my day, or I can get up and listen to some music. What sounds better? And then I just wait and I'd wait to see like how my energy felt, if I heard something. So I'd give myself choices. Because if I gave myself choices, I felt like I had more control and I had a little bit more freedom. So that's how I would start my day because I almost always when I have two choices, I can tell you, "Ooh, I want this, I don't want this."
Yeah.
So it made the voice easier to hear for me because there wasn't as much emotion attached to the choice. And that was the way I tried to simplify it way down for when I started out.
I think that's excellent. Excellent, excellent. I do that throughout the day. Two choices. That's yourself. That's your voice. That
Yep.
answer that you get, that's her.
And she's the best. Like the more you get to know her, you're like, God, I love myself. This is so great. Like, why didn't I talk to you for like the last 20 years? I mean, you could even be sitting in a car, about to pick up your kids and be like, wow, how was your day? Oh, I sort of liked it, but there was this one piece of my day that I could have done without. Oh, really? What would you have done instead? Right? It's like it's a good way for you to use your imagination too and your creativity because all of the energy that we want is accessible if we go to imagination and creativity. And we've
Definitely.
forgotten how to do that as adults.
Yeah.
That's why we also don't have as much access to this inner voice.
And the people in the cars next to us will just think we're on a call.
Or they'll be like, oh my God, she's listening to her voice. I want to listen to my voice. And then it'll just ripple effect out to
Yeah.
everyone.
You think about it though, like how crazy, like women or people, you see someone, you're like, oh, they're talking to their self. Yeah, they are. Like their inner self. It's okay.
I like to always put my hand on my chest too, because I feel like she hears me better when I do that. Because I'm like, oh, our hearts are connecting. This is the way that it will
Mhm.
work a little bit better, because touch signifies to the brain that something special is happening when you touch any part of your body, really, but even your heart. So if you can tie touch to listening, that also gives you more of your senses working together.
Love it. Okay. So here we go. We're going to delve into a handful of ways to connect with yourself. Again, this is going to take you from getting through your day, feeling angry, frustrated, overwhelmed, exhausted, to spending more of your day in what we like to call flow. So when you're connected to yourself, you're going to get all your things done. But instead of being one of those days where you like wake up, you stub your toe, you're out of toothpaste, you spill your coffee, this is the day where you're like, boom, 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 checking it all off. It's so easy. You're in alignment. All is good. Step number one for connecting with yourself, asking for help. And so we want to really make these like easy. We want to touch on all the things that would, the things that we would think about like, okay, I don't have money for a sitter. I can't ask for help. I have no village. Like, let's just get real. Let's answer all the questions that could get in the way for people. So asking for help, what could that look like?
Wow. I think asking for help, most of us will come up with any excuse in the book to not ask for help because it's a very vulnerable thing to admit that I'm not where I want to be or where I need to be right now. But here's the cool thing about asking for help. If you ask someone for help, you give them purpose. And if
Mhm.
they have purpose, they feel really good supporting you. Once I realized that I give people purpose when I ask for help, it changed the game for me. And suddenly I started asking for help all the time because I'm like, ooh, who could help me with this? Oh,
Mhm.
she can. She's going to feel like she's on purpose. I guess role or my job was always, how do I make sure that more people around me feel like they're more on purpose in life? And if you ask for help, that's how that happens. So that's the paradigm shift that I had to make in my own brain in order to get over my own insecurity or my own vulnerability in asking.
I think that's so common. It's probably one of the hardest things, I think, for women. I don't know why that is. Like, why do we feel like we can't ask for help and we're the first ones to offer it?
I think it depends on how our relationship with our parents was, like in my world, my mom and dad, they were always talking about how it was important for a woman to be so independent, be able to do things on your own. And so I really took that to heart. I mean, I remember some days, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I'm trying to move a huge desk upstairs to get to my apartment. And everyone's like, hey, can we help you with that? I'm like, no, no, I got it. I got it. I want to suffer. But like sometimes we're more attached to our suffering than we are attached to the ease. And so we have to change the relationship we have between how much we like to suffer and how much we like ease. Because the more you ask for help, the more ease can flow into your life.
How about also, do you notice a pattern that a lot of women are more comfortable asking for help and support in their work role and not so much in the home role?
100%. Every single woman I've ever coached, including this beautiful lady in front of me, right? We all have this because we think we are valuable in the work environment, and we don't think asking for help is as valuable in the home environment, even though the home environment is the only foundation that exists for us to act as that support lever. So, what I do when I work with a lot of women is I always say, okay, I know that we can make you extremely successful in business, but we can't create that for you until we have the foundational level of support in the home.
Mhm.
Because no matter what, most of us as women end up taking on like the head of the household role, making sure that the kids are taken care of, the food is prepped, there's, everything with the house is working the way it should. Sometimes that stuff doesn't fuel us, but I think also we need to be willing to look at all the things and be like, what is a good use of my time and what is not?
Mhm.
Not just because we're a mom and we can do it, or we're a mom and this is what moms should do. We have to actually look at what am I really good at and what do I want to be doing, investing my time in? And then what are all the things that really don't give me any joy, interest, or anything that lights me up? And how can I hand those off to somebody else?
Yeah.
Sometimes I hand them off to my children.
We just started that last week too. Yeah, chores. Chores are a beautiful thing. And I was like, what can I give them that I don't want to do? Yeah.
But even there, like if you as a mom don't feel like you can take a step forward to give yourself the support, maybe to get some babysitter coverage or to get some time away from the house, if you don't feel like you can even do that, how can you make sure that the things that you don't want to do, you're not having to do 24/7? Right? That could even be as simple as having a conversation with your spouse to say, here are the things that really crush my soul, or like, here are the things that crush my spirit. Laundry for me is one of those things. I will enable and support anybody around me who's willing to help with that. Even though it seems like such a simple thing, like, oh, I could probably get this done. No, it doesn't bring me joy or love or connection. I'm going to figure out a way that I don't have to do that.
Do you find too that, just starting to name and identify these things is helpful as well?
Well, it gives you freedom because all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, I don't have to do all of these things. I am
Mhm.
choosing to do these things. So you can either stand victim to the fact that you're doing all of these things, or you can say, wait a second, I have to own my choice. I have to decide if I don't want to do the laundry, that it's okay for me to make that choice. And if I decide, all right, I guess I'm going to do the laundry, well, then don't be upset at yourself that you said yes to it. Own the fact that I'm choosing to do the laundry in this moment. I'm not going to be upset that it's another task that I don't really enjoy. I'm just going to be like, well, I said I would do it. I'm owning it. I'm getting it done. And then I'll move on to something as a reward for myself for completing this task that doesn't mean anything to me. So we really have to get more into this reward system for ourselves. Okay, I'll negotiate with my feminine, with that voice inside. If I do this for you and you don't like it, what can we do for you afterwards that makes you feel lit up?
Love that. Or even during, right? Like I can choose to use this moment for peace. Like while I'm folding the laundry, I'm going to work on my breath. I'm going to work on listening to myself. Maybe she's angry and she's telling me all the reasons that we need to get laundry off her schedule. Put on fun music. Like that's been one of the choices or questions that I've gotten answered for myself. Okay, I don't want to do this thing at all. The reality is I absolutely have to do it. Question I often ask is how can I make it more fun? Music, like fun music. Throw on your Google, put on a fun song. Like the magic of music, I think is huge. It's free, it's easy, it's a state change. I love a
Yep,
state change.
very quickly, right? It's the
Hmm.
easiest state change that exists.
So asking for help, huge. I love that you touched on having our kids do it. I think also, for a lot of us, at least probably for most of the women watching this podcast, if we really are honest with ourselves, we probably do have enough money to spend on someone to help us around the house more than we're admitting to it. Like Annie said, maybe for some reason we're sitting in our suffering for whatever reason. We feel like we have to. There's, mother's helpers. You can hire teenagers. You can hire people to do the things around your house that you don't want to do so that you can be with your children. That's big for me. Like, I want to maximize my time with my kids. I don't want to be cleaning the kitchen, doing the laundry, doing the grocery shopping. I currently am doing all those things, but by the end of this year, I will not be.
And sometimes, we go through seasons of it, right? Like sometimes we're like, oh, we really want to be into cleaning. And so we do the
Yeah.
cleaning. And then other days we're like, this is not a good use of my time. I want to spend more
Yeah.
time with my kids, right? So it's okay to move between those patterns as you want and as you feel.
Yeah, and it can be so realistic to even get someone like 2 hours a couple times a week. Great. Get your laundry done. Check it off your list. You're never doing it again.
Those little wins help. And I think as moms, we tell ourselves that we can't do something unless it's like a big thing, or we don't win unless it's some big win. But like the small little win of having somebody come over once a week just to help fold the laundry and run all the loads of laundry, that is a huge win as a mom, because then you go and you get all these beautiful folded clothes. You don't even have to put them away. They might put them away. And you're like, oh my God,
Yes.
could life get any better? Yes, it will keep getting better as you keep listening to this inner voice.
And like you just said, it's those small things. I think the small things are really the things that add up, which takes us into step number two. Task number two, to connect with yourself, take advantage of the small moments.
This can be just as simple too as, most moms that I've worked with have always said to me, they're like, well, the second I get the kids to bed, then I'm so tired. I just want to get into bed myself. And then I have no time to do anything for myself. And I'm like, all right, well, what if it's a 5-minute shower? What if you just get into the shower and you rinse off? That can be a beautiful moment. I don't know how many other people who might be listening love the shower, but like the water is emotion and it's clearing all the emotion and all the pressures and all the other energy of everybody else off of you. So when you do get into bed, you're in your own energy, which might make it even easier to listen to your internal voice, right? So
Mhm.
that's just an example, right? The small moments, those are actually the moments that count because you can build upon them throughout the day. You don't have to have this big 45-minute massage. It can be, hey, at the beginning of the day, I wake up, I listen to my voice, and she wants to listen to music, so I listen to music. In the middle of the day, I'm really craving a delicious piece of food or some aspect of food that I love, so I'm going to make that for myself. What I do in between calls sometimes, because I do a lot of like coaching calls, I have a 15-minute window chunk where I'm like, I'm going to go tap dance. Now, I don't know how to tap dance at all. Like I do not, but I bought the shoes because I like the way the shoes sound on my kitchen tile. And I
Adorable.
do it, and my kids are like, "Oh my God, Mommy, you're so good!" I'm like, "I'm in Broadway. This is amazing," and I feel great. So you just got to pick those tiny little moments and figure out, what do I need to have fun? What does she need? What does that voice need to have
Mhm.
fun, to enjoy it more, and to make it all about me? So many times we're in that obligation state of I'm so obligated, and that feels very heavy. When you're
Yeah.
having fun, it doesn't.
So many things in there. I think, the bedtime routine I love that you talked about. That's a great opportunity, like you said, to connect with yourself, right? For self-love, for self-care, even if it's a minute. It doesn't have to be a long time. Most of us are going to be exhausted at the end of the day. We don't want to do anything active. We're in receiving mode. We're also in our theta brain state, which is an ideal time to turn into our intuition, to turn into ourself. So I think what's really big in these small moments is put your phone away. Like,
Yeah.
break that habit of using these small moments to get that quick email out. Like, get them out in chunks. Give yourself a few of these small moments to give yourself that choice. Like you said, okay, it's bedtime. Do I want to shower? Do I want to lay in bed and just put my hand on my heart, breathe, and maybe go over my day? Do I want to just lay in silence and see what comes up? Maybe I want to check in with, what do I want my morning to look like tomorrow? These can be little 5-minute things that are so simple and easy.
And you don't have to have it be completely silent when you do this either, right? The kids could still be mellowing down. Maybe they're talking to themselves a little bit or talking to each other, and you just let them know, hey, mommy's going to take 5, 10 minutes just to sit and be with myself. Because if you explain that to them, then they're going to start valuing that time with you
Mhm.
rather than trying to invade that time or take over that time, if that makes sense.
I think you and I both do this, right? So, like, I almost wouldn't have believed that that was true, but this became really important to carve out for myself. And, kids know our boundaries, right? So, like, if our kid ran into the street, we'd all say no. Like, no, 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 end of story. You don't do that. There's things that they just like can't encroach on. For me, this time, even though it's small and little, is one of those things, but I'm very intentional with my phrasing with them. Like, I want them to know what I'm doing so that they one day will do the same. Mommy
Correct.
just needs this 5 minutes to myself. I'm here next to you. If there's an emergency, I'm here, but otherwise, I'm in my own world.
And I always say, I'm like, you are welcome to join me. We can all lie here, put our hands in our hearts and our hands in our stomachs, and we can have this conversation with ourselves if you want. And sometimes they do. And it's a beautiful moment. I mean, little kids are so excited to connect with the inside of who they are because they think it's magic, and it is. We just forget that as we get older sometimes.
Okay, I feel like that takes us right into our next one, which I love. It's, making time for that quiet connection in the morning. Magical mornings.
Literally, that is the most important thing. And I don't know how you do it, but I want to hear you share with everybody, Melissa, because the way I do it, I know this sounds crazy. I wake up and the first 10 minutes, I have my alarm set that from, say, I wake up at 5 a.m., from 5 to 5:10, I literally sit there and I just have a conversation with God first to be like, I'm thankful for everything. Everything's amazing. I love my life. Thank you for everything you've created with me and for me. And then I'll be like, hey, are you still there? Do you want to say anything? Because I want to hear that voice speak before anything else happens in the day. So I've been doing that in the first 10 minutes, but I would love to hear what you've been up to too.
Yeah, I love that you do that. And it feels like you're starting the day in not in reactive mode, right? Like you're taking control of the day right away. You're creating that connection. It's kind of like you're telling yourself how this day is going to go. Like we're going to stay here for each other. That's how, again, you stay centered, you stay calm, you stay in flow.
And you make sure that she knows that she's important to you. So
Mhm.
that's the first conversation of the day you're having, that worth and that value lands.
Yeah, I love the mornings. I mean, I am a morning person, and I just, even though I'm a morning person, I like to wake up really slowly. So maybe I'm not a morning person. But because of that, I wake up early. So I get up like an hour before theoretically the kids wake up, but they all do it with me now, which is great. They've
Too.
all, tapped into this. And I basically have a variety of choices. And I ask myself, which one do I want? So I always have a great book. I have an amber reading light that I got on Amazon. It's like the best $10 I ever spent. So that when I'm reading or doing anything in the morning, it's red light only. I think that's really important. So I either read, I'll do some breath work, I'll put on meditation, I'll sit in silence, I'll do nothing. I usually lay for like 2 minutes before I do anything and I just check in. What is it that I want? I try not to have caffeine or anything like that in the mornings anymore. Sometimes I'll make like a warm beverage. Yeah. But whatever it is I want, I'm just very clear on why am I doing this? Okay, do I want to get on my iPad and play and write or listen to music? Okay, why? Is this for me or is this like reactive? Do I want to scroll Instagram because I'm disconnecting? Or am I wanting to get on there to see, some creative sparks and ideas? Like just being really intentional and checking in with why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, I think intentionality is the big piece here because I think when we get stuck in all the obligation and all the requests of other people, we lose our intentionality connection. So I think what you're saying is dead on, right? When you wake up in the morning, the first action has to be an intentional one because if your first action is reactionary, then you've set yourself down a certain neural pathway for the rest of your day, whether you believe it or not.
For anyone who hasn't experienced that, or I mean, we've all experienced that, but anyone who hasn't like seen how stark the contrast is and how much we have the ability to control it, go into like 3 days in a row your old way, go into like 3 days in a row trying it differently, and check in at the end of the day. Like, how did your day go? Did you feel scattered, rushed, overwhelmed? Did you feel calm? Did you get it all done? It's night and day. And we literally have the ability, no matter what's on our plate, to make that decision every single morning.
And to make that decision every single moment, right? Every single moment is a new moment. So don't beat yourself up if you're like, oh my God, my morning was crazy. Just take a moment, reset, and be like, all right, that was then. This is now. I've got a whole new moment right here. Because I do that with the boys all the time. I'm like, new moment, new moment. Where do we want to go? What do we want to feel? Because, little kids get so frustrated and so angry so quickly sometimes. So I'm like,
Mhm.
wait, in a moment, we're going to have another moment. Do we want to just rethink how we want to show up for that one? And the boys will be like, I guess we could not be angry in that moment. I'm like, good call. Okay. So it's the same thing. If they see us doing it, they will want to embody it too. So really, every time you choose to listen to your own voice, you're telling your kids it's okay for them to listen to theirs.
Love it. And I love that every moment's a fresh start. You don't have to wait for the next morning. Okay, I'll try it again tomorrow. Okay, so when I first started doing this, and I bet a lot of people would resonate with this, I feel like that masculine voice, the shoulds, the obligations, it comes in hot and heavy in the morning. So how do we start to recognize that and switch into the more feminine?
It's tough when you first start because the masculine is so intense, and most of us only listen to the masculine voice. So that's where what I started doing was the masculine voice would be like, okay, you got to get up, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And I'd be like, hold on, hold on. I have heard what you've said. What does she think? because I want to hear what she thinks as well. So I would have that conversation. I mean, people, my friends thought I was nuts at first. They're like, I always see you talking to the masculine and feminine. I can tell when you're doing it. And they're like, what are they saying? And I'm like, well, he's telling me the 15 things that need to get done immediately. And she's like, all the important things will get done today. And I love that because you can feel the difference between all this has to be done and all the important things will get done. And that calm that came from that statement, because I think that statement was the first time I really heard her speak to me. I was like, oh, I like that better. Let's do that. I like that so much better. Let's just say all the important things will get done because then we're not judging ourselves at the end of the day that we didn't get to our 15-page list.
I think that's been like the biggest switch I've made in the mornings is, and I didn't realize it's listening to the feminine versus the masculine. It used to be, I would call it my power hour. So I would get up at, actually, I would get up at like 4:30 a.m.
Been
I'd
there.
get all, you still get up pretty early. I know.
Do some days, yes. It
Yeah.
depends on the day and who I'm talking to in here, right?
I would get up, I would do all the to-dos. Like I'd get my emails done. It was getting ahead of the day, slamming the coffee so I could get to the 5:45 CrossFit. Like talk about starting the day in high speed and then wondering why my entire day went like that and why I needed that glass of wine at the end of the night, no judgment, but like needed that come down.
Almost everyone's stuck in that cycle, right? We amp ourselves up and then we need something to calm ourselves down.
Whereas when I just checked in with the feminine voice, it's she likes to lay around in the morning. So it's like sleepy. It's often, I mean, I shared a lot on my Instagram stories. It's like reading a book. It's nestling in with my kids. It's slow. And then I get on. I'll jam out like 20 minutes of emails, but like first I sit until I'm ready. And it's not, I mean, my day, everything's still getting done. It's just getting done way more in flow.
And that's the emotional deposit because we have to think of our brain as a bank account. And we can put a lot of masculine deposits in, but if we put those masculine logical deposits in, it doesn't feel the same. If we put the emotional deposit in where we're feeling connected to either ourselves or to our kids or to something that's important for us,
Mhm.
then we can ride that capacity wave much longer. So if you start the day at like 100%, well, most people don't start the day at 100%, but if you start the day, you always want to have like as many emotional deposits at the beginning of the day as possible because it allows you to have more capacity throughout your entire day so that by the time you leave the office or you leave your work or you come home, you're only at 30% deplete, you're down to 30% depletion. You're not all the way at zero. Because most people will drive themselves into the ground every single day, come home and have nothing left for their family because they have had no emotional deposit at the beginning of the day or throughout.
Yeah, you've also touched on something I want to bring up real quick here. Walking into your home at the end of the day in a feminine flow state. So let's talk about what does that mean? Why is that important? And what does that look like?
For most of us, as any parent that works at all, we have to have transition time. We have to have transition time between whatever our role is when we're in the business world and our role of being a nurturing, loving mother or a sexy lover for our spouse. So what most people do is we just by default get in the car, drive home, walk through the front door, and we're like, oh shoot, now I'm family person and I haven't even transitioned out. So in order to get into that feminine flow state, it has to be a very intentional process. So you have to plan not only some time to write down all the things that are in your brain that you don't want to take into your mom or your lover persona. You've got to do that. So you have to debrief the day. And you also have to create a transition feeling because you need to create a feeling of who you are when you play that role of mother or lover, depending on who you're going home to meet. You have to create that feeling inside of you first. The easiest way to get there for most women is to have a memory, right? To use a memory as the kickstart or catalyst for that feeling. So for a lot of the women that I've worked with, they know the last 30 minutes of the day is debriefing the day, writing down all the things that their brain is focused on so they can turn off that piece of the logic so that they don't have to spin as they enter the home. And then they take the next 30 minutes, if they're driving or if they're walking or whatever it is they're doing, it's 30 minutes of figuring out what is the emotional mood that I want to create inside of me so that my kids and my spouse can see and feel how I am in this more nurturing, feminine, connected mode. So the memory is the key to the catalyst of all the emotion. If you have a memory, like for example, it could be like the most intimate, connected relationship moment that you've had with your spouse, right? You can bring in that memory and then your whole body will change because your emotional state changes. You can
Mhm.
use that when you walk in and you hug him or her, right? And then it's just different when you're going into mom mode, right? Because there are different memories you have with your kids that light up your whole body. And that's the emotion that you then shift into to bring into the home environment.
Love it. And like you said, if you're not walking in completely depleted because you've given yourself these emotional deposits throughout the day, it's going to be so much easier to nurture our children.
So much easier. And again, emotional deposits don't have to be like hours of time. It can be 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there. It's all about building connection and fun in the 5 minutes or the little bit of time you have.
And I do believe that when women get into the habit of doing this and loading up those small moments throughout the week, you're going to find a way to carve out 45 minutes to an hour for yourself once a week. I read this incredible book. I highly recommend it. It's called The Artist's Way.
Yes.
And in this book, they talk about having an artist date. And for any of you following me, this is how I got back to gymnastics. I haven't been since I was 11. I was like, that is the piece of me that I miss. So we are all essentially artists, just like when we were little. And we all have this art that we miss and crave, whether it's drawing or painting or pottery or dancing, pole dancing, salsa dancing, going in nature. So I recommend we all carve out this 1 hour a week to either do nothing, absolutely nothing, just don't be on your phone, or even better, to engage in this artist date with yourself.
Because that's going to allow you to discover what does light me up, what does get me excited, what does get me inspired, right? How did you feel, Melissa, when you literally went back to gymnastics, starting doing all those moves? I mean, didn't that just light you up like crazy? How was your energy after that?
So, first of all, I was like, this is crazy for all the physical reasons. But then, second of all, like, it's at night, it's at dinner time, it's twice a week. I'm like, how is this even going to work in our family? It's an additional financial cost. It means Jason's cleaning up after dinner. I'm home late, like all the things. I went, when I walked in the house from that session, I was so lit up that it was like I could tell my family was going to do whatever they could to help support me and make this happen. Because that's the version of me that they all want, crave, and need.
And that's the version of you that you crave and need too. Otherwise, it wouldn't work, right?
Mhm.
So, for all the women who are listening, if you want to be lit up, no one else is going to give you that ability. You have to discover what is it that lights me up? What is this voice telling me so that you can step into this, I think, more powerful version of yourself? Because that version of you is what brings the connection and the calling and the growth to your family and to your friends and to your business.
Last question, unless there's anything else, any good take home nuggets that we have. I feel like we covered so much. Basically, just again, a reminder. So, for anyone who's feeling angry, frustrated, overwhelmed, it's a lack of connection with ourselves. See this self love, this self care as connecting with this inner voice that Annie's talking about from the beginning. If you don't know where to start, just start giving yourself choices. Do I want this or do I want this? Just start easy, get that whisper to get into a louder voice, and it'll just get more and more powerful and simpler to undertake.
And I have one more thing that I'd like to add around forgiveness, because as moms, we tend to think that all these feelings and all this obligation that we've accepted and been playing in, not really like enjoying, but suffering in for a while, we tend to take it really badly and poorly that we've done this to ourselves for so long. But instead, just forgive yourself and say, I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Because holding on to any aspect of resentment or fear or worry or lack of forgiveness of yourself for being in those old actions, it just doesn't serve. I mean, every morning I would get up and I'd be like, I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. Ho'oponopono work, right? So that I could get to a place where I wasn't upset that I had spent so many years devaluing that voice. So you might have to do a little bit of forgiveness work first as you start this journey in order to hear her loudly,
Mhm.
because she hasn't been heard for so long. And that's okay.
I think that's a really important point. The other day I was in yoga and they did that, the ending, the namaste, the light in me honors the light in you. And I want to think of this word for the dark in me honors the dark in you. Because we all also have, a dark, shadowy self. And it's really important to connect with her. And just like Annie said early on in the episode, like not to judge it. This dark, shadowy part of us has so much to offer. And sometimes in the mornings, if I wake up and I'm like, what is it that I need today? I'm like, I need to feel grief. I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm sad. Like what I'll do in that morning time is I'll plug in like sad songs and I'll just go into it. I'll cry, and I just like feed that sense of self, and the rest of my day again just goes so smooth. It's like it's okay to go in because once you go in, she's often like, "Okay, I'm done. Thank you for feeding me. We're good to go.
It's when you are in resistance to the feeling that that feeling sticks around and causes a lot of havoc in the day.
Mhm.
So the more you can go into it, like Melissa just shared, and really feel all of it, the shorter that response typically is. Right.
One last piece, I just would encourage every woman, give this a shot. The more you do these little moments, you're going to start to see how worth it you are, how easy this can become, and how differently you're going to show up. Like we all want to show up in this calm, balanced, happy flow state. This is who we are. I think, again, we've just, so many of us lost ourselves along the way, and we don't have to. That's really the take home message. We don't have to lose ourselves during this busy season of our lives. And these are the easy, tangible ways to reconnect and get that spark back. And I'm so excited to hear how everyone does once they incorporate them. Thank you so much, Annie.
Oh,
We'll
you're
see you
so
soon.
welcome. Thank you for having me. I love every moment we get together.
I'm so excited to hear how your life changes when you incorporate all the things that we just shared in this episode about giving yourself emotional deposits through the day and how this is dramatically going to change the way that your day feels. This is going to lead to you showing up more connected, happy, calm, joyful, and balanced for all of the people around you. I would love to hear from you. Comment below. Absolutely go ahead and share this episode with a friend. Throw a like under it if you like it. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and we'll see you next time.